I've decided to make a special video for many of you out there on YouTube because of a lot of confusion that seems to be going on about politics. And I want to tell you that what I'm about to say is very important. There are certain interest groups, certain people, who don't want you to know about what I'm about to tell you. In fact, they don't mind you knowing about extreme views, extreme political views, because they benefit from that. In fact, that fits right into their agenda. The more extreme reactions they get from the public, the more power they have. Let's remember the old adage, divide and conquer. The fact of the matter is that we live in a very, very complex world. I mean, think about it. You are just one of over 6.5 billion, maybe more than 7 billion people in the world. Just one. Now, your personal freedom must matter to you. I mean, don't tell me that you'd rather be a slave or you'd rather be a peon to somebody else. I assume that you'd like to have your full measure of freedom. We all would. And what I'm about to tell you is really, really important, because you're not going to hear it anywhere else here on YouTube. At least I haven't been able to find any YouTube video that is going to tell you what I'm going to tell you. And I must remind you, I must qualify this. This video has information that certain very powerful people, interest groups, would rather that you did not know. They don't mind you falling for all kinds of extreme agendas. Well, I won't mention the names. I mean, I could, and I can give you an idea. I mean, there's certain videos on YouTube, certain points of views that espouse communism. And communism is, I'll tell you why later, but it's an impossibility. It can't happen, and any attempt to make it happen fails. And there are other people on YouTube who want you to fall for their paleo-conservative point of view. A sort of a new, cleverly disguised form of right-wing fascism, pretending to be something for freedom and liberty. But paleo-conservatives, I can assure you, are not for your personal freedom. The free advice man, that is me, has always been about freedom. I mean, the very premise of me sitting out in New York City in the Village, in Greenwich Village, with a sign that said free advice, offering an opportunity for any person who walks past me on the sidewalk to stop and talk to me, was all about free speech, freedom of expression, about freedom. Because if you don't have the freedom to think your own thoughts, and if you don't have the freedom to express yourself the way you really think, then everything else doesn't matter. There is no democracy, there's nothing to talk about if you don't have personal freedom. Freedom is essential to being a human being, to your human rights. Without freedom, your life is not meaningless, but it's a really horrible experience. And you know what? In a sense, in our world today, very few of us have true freedom. In fact, perhaps almost none of us have absolute freedom. Now wait a second. Philosophically, none of us do have any freedom. Because, you know, in terms of the universal big picture of the infinite universe, we're on this tiny little speck of a planet called planet Earth. And we're very limited right now in our technology. We're very limited in our attitude towards one another. We're going through a lot of crap that we don't need to go through. But we are, because we're still living inside the cave. In fact, we've been running back into the cave of darkness for fear of what we see out in the universe. It's, you know, it must be very scary for a lot of people to realize that all those images we're seeing through NASA's Hubble Space Telescope and other fantastic technologies that NASA and other space agencies have produced are showing us an image or images of a universe that is infinite. And even the physicists are beginning to think, well, wait a second. Big Bang, Big Crunch. Wait a second. It all started with a singularity and it's all going to blow back in on itself. Nah, there might be another way. as far as I'm concerned, I subscribe to a minority view in the field of physics, in the field of cosmology, and that is the minority view of plasma cosmology, or a steady-state universe. There's a lot of chaos in the universe in terms of galaxies and stars. There's a lot of things going on in space. Some of it could just wipe us out in actually a matter of moments if it were to happen. Fortunately, statistically, we probably have some time left. Could be 1 billion years, could be 500 million years, could be more, could be less. But you know what? The universe is chaotic. And within that chaos, there's also some degree of order. But that's the physical universe. What about the spiritual universe? You know, there is a dimension to reality that we still don't know about enough, at least scientifically. We don't know what it is that makes us sense that we exist. I personally think that we have a soul, and that all living creatures, all living plants and animals, flora and fauna, have spiritual essence in them. What you could call altogether God. Not the God that created the stars, the planets, and physics. I don't subscribe to that. I subscribe to a God that is a spiritual entity, and that it exists in infinite number throughout the universe, in almost like a blob-like state, and it sometimes enters into a relationship with the physical and starts evolving life. That's more or less my point of view, but that's for another time. Now, one of my favorite books, as the Free Advice Man, is The Little Prince. The Little Prince, actually, it's in a sense my favorite book, because The Little Prince is about freedom. It's about your freedom to understand the world around you and react according to a better understanding of that world, rather than assuming that everything is what it seems. I highly recommend, if you get a chance, not to get the new translation of The Little Prince, but to get an original copy from pre-1990s, because any copy you get after 1990s, the translation I'm not happy with. The fact of the matter is that the Little Prince has some wonderful anecdotes and some beautiful ideas in it, and it encompasses a lot of the ideas of freedom. Now, I'm going to get right down to it. The fact of the matter is that the people who are in power in the world are not the rich people and the mega rich that you see in the media. Yes, those people have a lot of power and a lot of influence. But they too, ultimately, have to act according to certain things and certain interests and even certain people. You know, think about it. If you could, let's say, have access to the money of a billionaire, but you could yourself only live on a few million a year and pretend to even have less money, and all you would have to do is give a call to that billionaire and say, hey, listen, I'd like to visit that mansion of yours out in Long Island. Right now it's empty, as I understand. Would you let me spend a few weeks